Hello and welcome to Nat Chat. Today our guest is Tamsin Jowett, who is the Vice President of Aspergers Victoria, and I'm Mirella Rich. Welcome to the program, Tamsin.
Thank you, Mirella.
We've recently had on the President of Aspergers Victoria, Lyndall. Yeah.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you became the Vice President of Aspergers Victoria and what Aspergers is, just to refresh people's memory?
My journey started with my son being diagnosed after years of wondering what was going on. And I was looking for sources of information and found Aspergers Victoria, and they supported me and helped me and through that initial stage. And then I was drawn in to the team because they're so passionate about Aspergers, and take it from there. And so on Aspergers is a neurological difference in people, and it affects their ability to understand social cues.
Right. And so how does someone help someone with Aspergers in those situations when they can't, what are some positive things that they can do to help the person with Aspergers?
It's really the main thing to do if you're in my situation as a parent is to find out as much information about Aspergers as you can and research all the options, get lots of advice from all the professionals to help you, get your school involved, and there's a lot of support available out there if you're going through the situation I went through.
And is there something that the loved ones can do as a family together with the person with Aspergers, or a spouse can do with someone with Aspergers?
Really, it's finding out information and support. If you find out information, you help the siblings learn as a family, or if you're the spouse, research the information, and then you'll find ways that you can help your spouse and manage the relationship in a better way, so that you can manage the quirks of Aspergers and find the positives in your relationship.
And is there any research done on healthy diet with the person with Aspergers? Any particular diet they can follow that actually helps them with it?
There's no actual sort of conclusive research about diet, but there's quite a lot of information out there about various diets that can help. Such as the gluten-free, casein-free diet some people follow. You can have an additive-free diet, which just is healthy generally for people. And there's other sort of natural options that can help behaviours. But there's nothing that actually has shown that it conclusively helps Aspergers.
Okay. And given your experience, can you, maybe there might be another mother watching the show, is there some tips you can give her or father who's watching the show, or someone else who has someone with Aspergers, how you dealt with it and how you were in the beginning and then how you progressed through it, because they might be just wanting to know?
I think it's being open to learning and learning as you go along the journey, because the information you need changes. Make sure that your son or daughter or spouse knows that you still love them, and there's no compromise in how much you love them. In fact, you love them more than ever because you're helping them through this diagnosis, if it is that stage. Generally, being very supportive is just so important, and finding out as much as you can to help them with their various sensory issues or social issues, just being there for them is as much as possible. And I highly recommend going to Aspergers Victoria, the support groups.
The support groups there.
And talking and sharing your experience so that you get the support yourself.
Right. And do people go to the Aspergers support groups even if they're living with someone who is not diagnosed with Aspergers, but they seem to have the symptoms, but the person's too afraid to get diagnosed?
Oh, definitely. There's people there just getting support for how they'll manage that person, and we're quite experienced with that sort of situation.
Right. And there are some basic tips that you follow, like some just quick, easy tips that you follow and that you can give our viewers on how to help someone with Aspergers?
There are tips. We have a lot of information. We also have a lot of books in our library. Also on our website, there's also a wealth of information about tips on how to live with Aspergers, being someone with Aspergers, or being the partner of someone with Aspergers, or being the parent of someone with Aspergers.
So there are some signs where they may not seem compassionate. How would you deal? We'll just nut through a few of them. How would you deal with that when you're talking to this person with Asperger's and they're not acting in a normal, compassionate way? What would be your reaction now that you know?
Well, you just need to be understanding and not judgmental is the main thing, and understand that they're not doing it intentionally. That is how the person is, and you can help them develop an awareness if they're willing to understand a bit more about their lack of understanding.
And have you seen progress in that, where they actually start to become more compassionate when because of the neurological effects they weren't compassionate?
Usually people with Asperger's have quite a good level of intelligence, and they can learn so much, including the social behaviours. There's some very good techniques out there, such as social thinking. There's activities speech therapists can provide, OTs, which will open up their world so that they can learn how to manage these environments which they find difficult.
And in your experience, what sort of process did you go through?
I went through all sorts of specialists and tried them out and found the ones that my son liked and the ones my son didn't like. And I have to be guided by him as to what he needs and what helps him. And as he gets older, he's more aware of what helps him and how to manage his own deficits. And also, he's also discovered his talents. So a lot of people with Asperger's will have talents of some sort or really good abilities, and you really need to focus on their strengths. And so they're aware of their strengths more than their weaknesses, holding them back.
Right. And how would you say your own child has progressed now since you've done your own research on Asperger's?
Well, he's in a mainstream school. He's got friends. He's happy. I think that's really what any parent wants with their child, but it is a journey and we'll see what comes up along the way.
All right, we're about to go to a break now. You're watching Nat Chat. Stay with us. We'll be back with more very shortly. Hello and welcome to Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. If you've just joined us, we're here with Tamsin Jowett, who is the Vice President of Aspergers Victoria. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mirella.
Now, can you tell us some positives of someone having Aspergers?
Aspergers has quite a few benefits that would be good to talk about, including their attention to detail. So people with Aspergers will notice all sorts of things that a normal person wouldn't notice. That it being neurotypical is how we describe it. They will also be very focused on their passionate interests. So they can filter out distractions and work on that passionate interest for hours, which is where you get fantastic scientific discoveries and people like Einstein, who we suspect might have been an Aspie, as we call them. They also are amazingly honest and very loyal friends generally, because they like rules and that works to their advantage for those sorts of aspects in their life. They have an unusual intelligence often in that they won't accept what people will say is the norm. They'll think beyond that. Their minds work in a different way to ours, which is just wonderful. And I find that the thinking is very entertaining. Sometimes at dinner I'll get my son, when he was younger, asking a question about something to do with the planets and why they aren't aligned, and suddenly you think, I have to go and find that out. And so they teach you quite a lot, wow. I find, as you go along.
Right. And what's this brochure you have here on Asperger's?
This is about Aspergers Victoria, and it gives an outline about what Asperger's is and also what Aspergers Victoria does as an organisation. We're totally volunteer run and we have minimal government funding. We only had $2,000 government funding last year, which doesn't even pay a part of our rent. But we have a wonderful group of volunteers who are all very passionate about Asperger's. Some of them have Asperger's, some of them are parents, some of them are carers. So quite a wide community, and we welcome new volunteers to come along and help us. We do give training to our volunteers. So if they're running support groups, they get training to help manage a group. And we've found that some of our volunteers, through volunteering with Aspergers Victoria, have gone on to get a job because they had volunteering with us on their CV. Right. So it's wonderful. We're really excited about that for them.
And did they have Aspergers as well, the volunteers?
Yes.
Okay, so it's opened them a new avenue of opportunity for them.
They can develop new skills, really. And also it's building the confidence with a group of very supportive people at Aspergers Victoria. And they're building their networks and friendship circles and a lot more for
and I've read as well that people with Asperger's don't often look at people in the eye. What's the meaning behind that?
Talking to my son about it, he finds it very difficult looking people in the eye as well as listening. And he says there's so much information in a person's face while he's trying to process what they're saying. So he finds it better to look down and just focus on the listening aspect of the communication so that he gets that right. So it's a selective way of trying to understand the communication.
It's very interesting because that could be really badly misinterpreted because people might, have people say if you can't look at someone in the eye, you can't be trusted.
Exactly.
So that's a bit of a bit difficult.
And Jack's tried, he does practice it. He tries to work out how to manage that so he will glance up and work out ways so that he can see that people still trust him. Yeah. So that's very important.
So I suppose they have to learn tricks on it, like just say, don't look at, pretend they've got like a smiley face in the middle of their forehead or something.
Yeah. Look at their nose.
Yeah, look at their nose and pretend there's a bee there or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Little tricks. So it's like that, isn't it? You've got to teach these social skills, but make it so that it's, exciting or fun for them. Be creative with it.
Yeah, and also in a way that's understandable to them. So if you use things like their passionate interests, that will help them learn. If in classrooms, if you can do something on trains, then you'll find the child with Asperger's who loves trains will be so involved in that subject. So teachers can use it, that sort of passionate interest, parents, and also spouses if you...
And do you know much about the person, Asperger's, who actually discovered Asperger's? Do you know much about him and how he came to discover Asperger's?
He was a scientist in Germany, and it was around the time of the Nazis. And there is speculation that he might have had Asperger's himself, and he realised that there were kids that had similar characteristics to himself and had struggled with social communication. So he started to study that, but interestingly, at around the same time, there was another scientist in America who was also studying Asperger's, and in the end, their research ended up being pulled when one of the assistants went from Germany across to America. There's a whole new book about that.
Right, okay. And also, we were talking off camera, Asperger's is not, it's not a fault, it's a difference. Can we talk about that?
It does get classified as a disability, which is a card that can be played if the person needs to, but really it's just a different neurological way of thinking. And with Asperger's, it's part of the autism spectrum of disorders, and we sort of say there's a spectrum that goes from one end to the other, and you'll find that the neurotypical person is there on the spectrum and Asperger's is somewhere in here, but everyone with Asperger's is different, so have different capabilities. And then it goes through to other various parts of the autism spectrum.
So with Asperger's, it's not just, they're not all alike, everyone's not all alike.
I think there's a saying that if you've met one person with Asperger's, you've met one person with Asperger's. There is some similarities, but each one of them is quite different and has different strengths and different weaknesses.
So, I mean, of course, we're all individual people. I mean, no one on earth is perfect anyway. Everyone's got their little whatever.
Exactly.
So I guess that the message is just trying to accommodate and try and be understanding and caring towards one another, whatever you've got, really.
Yeah, and really supporting them in their strengths and just help them overcome their weaknesses. And really, as a carer or parent or any sort of supporter, just being there for them, loving them no matter what, is what you really have to do.
Beautiful. About to go to a break now. Okay. You've been watching Nat Chat. We're about to go to a break. We'll see you again shortly. Hello and welcome back to Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. If you've just joined us, we're here with Tamsin Jowett, who's the Vice President of Aspergers Victoria. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mirella.
Can you tell us about your role as Vice President and also Communications Coordinator of Aspergers Victoria?
Well, that means that I sit on the board and am involved in all the management decisions. But in my role as Communications Coordinator, I've set up and managed the Facebook site, which has all sorts of relevant information for people with Asperger's and autism in general. We also have a LinkedIn site, and I manage the newsletter, the quarterly newsletter, which comes out with all sorts of information, the latest about Asperger's, where the events are happening, new research, and also events we're running at Aspergers Victoria, which every quarter we run quite a few events. Right. So, which are on the sort of the latest topics for members.
And you do that how often does the newsletter come out?
Every quarter. Right, so we basically run it with the seasons, which works quite well. Right. So, and it's usually at least sort of 20 to 30 pages long. There's quite a lot of information. Gee. It's a matter of what not to put in rather than what to put in, because there's always so much new information coming out. And
what do you find as a communications coordinator in helping people with Asperger's? For myself, I usually research things for my son or my family or other things I hear about, and really it's just feeding that through into the communications that are going out for Aspergers Victoria, which I always think I'd like to share, just, because it might be someone out there who will find that really helpful. Yeah. And I think that's the role of a lot of our volunteers. It's sharing and hoping in some way we can make a difference in someone else's life out there. And what subjects do you cover in seminars and workshops? We do a careers workshop, which is very popular. We recently did a workshop on video modelling, which was got a very good response. We will cover sort of topics that members tell us they're interested in and want to know more. So we'll find a very good speaker and organise them to come along for a night, and all the members will come along. We'll get sometimes over 100. Once a year we get Tony Atwood to come down from Queensland to talk, and he's always very interesting. So we'll get sort of 300 people come along to those talks. Okay, can you tell us about Tony Atwood? Tony Atwood is one of the main psychologists who specialises in Asperger's and the spectrum, and he's very interesting in his views. He's one of the very early ones who spoke about the positives of Asperger's and not talking about the deficits, really, how much Asperger's is something that is a positive for the individual, and how the individual can really make the most of their life with Asperger's. And does it ever happen that parents or spouses become depleted because they feel like they're always accommodating the person with Asperger's, and how would they deal with that situation? Oh, definitely. It is quite hard on the family, especially in the early stages, or whether you're family or you're a spouse of someone with Asperger's. But really it's educating yourself and working out how to manage the various behaviours that are causing issues in the family. And that also educating any siblings, so they understand maybe it's not intentional, and how to manage any triggers that they might be causing in the Asperger child or sibling with Asperger's. And once they understand that, then things can get a lot smoother in a household. But then you still get situations where parents can't agree on parenting, or you just have to realise that manage the best way forward that you can in that situation. And so what do parents do in that situation to get help? Is there like a group or something that can help the parents? Yes, they're a group. We've got groups for partners, parents, carers, who come along and share what is troubling them, and they'll often find someone else in the group at Aspergers Victoria's has been through that and has something to share that will really help them.
Then also there's psychologists that we can recommend who will help them with specific aspects, or speech therapists. There is help on hand.
Right. And what was it that made you so passionate about getting so involved that you became the Vice President?
I think it was going through the whole experience of the diagnosis, and it is quite a confronting thing to go through. But then at that stage we'd already been through quite a troubled period, because it was arrive at school, and every time you arrive, the parents, the teacher's standing there waiting to talk to you about some behaviour that's happened that day. But the teacher just didn't understand my child and didn't understand the behaviour. So once we worked out what was going on, we can then tell the teachers what was going on. And I just found when I got to the support group and other people said, I've been through that, this is what we did, and maybe you need to change schools, or maybe, tell the teacher this, or there's this tip sheet on the website of Aspergers Victoria. It sort of opens up a whole lot of other options. You feel like there is a way out. There is a way through this.
And what about the before and after? Have you noticed much changes in people who have had Aspergers and gotten some kind of help? It's usually communication skills, isn't it?
It is.
It's nothing. It's not medication, is it?
No, not at all. It's really teaching them the behaviours and learning, giving them confidence in their strengths. And then, as Tony Atwood was talking about in his recent talk for Aspergers Victoria, that some people with Aspergers can almost become subclinical because they're coping so well, and they're fitting into their environment, they're fitting in socially, that really most people wouldn't even know they had Aspergers, but they do have their special mind still, but they've learnt ways to sort of manage their life and be happy.
Right. And I guess there must be ways as well, like maybe someone has Aspergers and the parents or the spouse doesn't know, or they're not even diagnosed, and they're thinking, why is that person being so rude? Why are they ignoring me? Why are they being, this sort of way? What can they do in that situation if they don't know?
The person themselves doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation. So if you were related to that person, you knew something about Asperger's, you might want to try and find out information in ways that you can help them understand why they're behaving that way. But sometimes some people don't want to change, so there is that aspect as well, especially people who've had Asperger's all their life and they don't believe they should. But then we have had cases of people who are in their 80s who realise that they've had Asperger's all their life, and this is why they've had difficulties in certain ways, and they will go and learn the social behaviours and realise after all those years life could have been a bit easier.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
It's great.
That's beautiful. The human spirit, isn't it?
Yeah,
even
absolutely.
At 80,
even at 80.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me, Mirella. It's great.
Great. You've been watching Nat Chat. I'm Mirella Rich. I hope you enjoyed the program. See you again soon.